Hello, my name's Bev Holden from the Clear Thinking Partnership, and I'm joined by Mike Collins from DPG today. We are live from the city of Glasgow College, and we're at the ScotLanDConnect Unconference. Mike and I tried a few weeks ago to have a hangout to talk about collaboration, and unfortunately we failed and we abandoned our interview. So we thought while we were together we'd take advantage of the opportunity to talk about collaboration and the difference that it makes in the work that Mike does. So the thing that attracted me to Mike originally was that he said collaboration is a new currency. And Mike's role in learning solutions within DPG means that he handles a community of learners, and he's grown that community of learners. So Mike, tell us a little bit about how collaboration works for you and what the positive experiences are that you've had.
Cool, big question. Collaboration has been a massive part of my last 7-8 years in my professional career. I think it's probably wise just to start right at the very beginning, which is the story that I kind of tell to people when they ask how I got into community management, community development. And I spent some time at RBS and attended the Learning Technologies Conference back in 2007. And I listened to a session that explained what a connected enterprise was and what a networked organisation was. And these things kind of really struck a chord with me. I was fresh out of my CIPD qualification, fresh in the industry as a kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed learning professional who's really done a lot of face-to-face delivery, inductions and specific programs. And this whole concept of being able to talk to anyone within your organisation and share information, to connect and to learn from people, just kind of struck something. And it sounds kind of, quite strange, but something really appealed to me within that. And that very night I went home and created an online community. There was no thought to it, no kind of strategic, like what we're going to do with it, but dared to be different. Nothing was happening like that within my team and organisation, and created this community. And then literally introduced it to a friend, and it spread like wildfire. And I saw firsthand the power of the social tools and collaborative tools that enable people to connect within an organisation, within different teams, and that's how it started. And I think, having the belief and the passion for doing something different is what drives a lot of the stuff that I do there.
Yeah.
The opportunity arose with DPG to again be daring, be different, and think differently about how we could create a community of practice, an online identity, a tribe almost, where people can come together and share their own experiences and learn from one another, specifically to L&D and HR. And collaboration is absolutely key for me for learning and development in HR, because it's all about people. It's helping people be the best that they can, to learn from one another, to develop a sense of identity and become, whether it's about raising the profile in the organisation or externally, but getting access to different thinking, to different people that then inspires you to go on to do something different. And I think the thing for today really rings true with collaboration is it is about daring, it's about being creative and thinking differently about how we work, how we learn, how we interact with people. And those are kind of the founding principles, I think, where I think about collaboration, not just in a sense of how people work together, but mindset, behaviour, culture. Do you want to work in an organisation where it's very siloed, it's very isolated, or do you want to work in an open environment that's based around trust, openness, collaboration, transparency, where anybody can connect with anybody else and have no fear of any hierarchy or you shouldn't be doing that, you can't talk to that person? Because once you get into that sort of area, then ideas can really gather momentum and things can change. But these things don't change overnight. I think in my experience, collaboration has been a means to enable other things to happen. So I've a massively positive experience in terms of collaboration for me and my own personal and professional development and the things that I've been involved in. And to see the DPG community grow over the last 2 years from me and 2 people chatting about how this community could grow to now being a thriving community of 2,800 professionals, is something that I'm deeply proud of. But it's not been my work, it's been through other people. And had those people not been involved, then that community would not have taken, would not be what it is today.
Yeah. That's really interesting about the growth, and it's quite quick growth, I guess, in terms of bringing a community together. what are some of those key ingredients? What are the things that you noticed and that you learnt about that you had to do to really bring that community to the level that it's at now?
Yeah, I think in my experience, one of the things that you've got to do is you've got to establish a need. So there is no point in kind of introducing a different way of working or introducing different tools or different concepts if there's not a need, because people will not buy into that. You won't answer the what's in it for me, so what am I going to get from being part of this? Julie Wedgwood, who's another kind of person that I really kind of look up to in terms of community aspects, introduced me to the 4 Ps. And now I'm on the spot and I probably forget them, but it's around people, place. So have you got the people? Have you got the place, or whether it's a technology or an open space, or have you got the space to bring people together? Have you got the passion? And this is absolutely essential, because I think if you are working with trying to change something, you have to be passionate and enthusiastic about that. And a good motto, if you're not enthusiastic about something, you don't expect anybody else to be. And enthusiasm inspires greatness, and I think if you're going to create an online community, or you're going to encourage people to collaborate, you've got to be that role model. You've got to be the person that wears it, the t-shirt, and is the one who is daring and putting themselves out there. And sometimes it will fall on deaf ears, some things will work, but it is about developing that formula. So those are the 3 Ps, and the 4th P is the Pied Piper. And again, this links to the role model aspect. And the Pied Piper played his flute, and all the children, the rats and children followed him. And it's the same when you're trying to create change and get people to learn from the behaviours that you're demonstrating. And I think people learn from what they see around them. So you have to be the person that is acting in a way that you hope other people will then act. And that's how a movement starts. We chatted last night about leadership lessons from Dancing Guy. And sometimes it is about taking that step and being that lone nut who is going against the grain, who is doing something different. But if you believe that is the right thing to do, then that will inspire others to get involved. That will answer the what's in it for me, and then that change will happen and that momentum will grow. And I think that's what the DPG community has shown me, is that if you have that vision, if you have that purpose, and you absolutely believe in it, you can achieve it, and you can work through other people and encourage and inspire other people to get involved in it as well.
Okay. One of the things that's different about this episode of Collaborate Live is we actually have a live audience in the room, as well as people viewing from outside. They might make a noise now, I suspect. That's just to prove that I'm telling the truth. And our audience may well have some questions for Mike in a moment or two. In fact, we have questions now. This is good. So there's a disembodied voice that you're going to hear now, but it's Kate Hargreaves. So Kate, tell us your question.
So then I've got a question for Mike. How do we promote and enable collaboration in traditional power structures, i.e. organisations?
With extreme difficulty. but it can be done. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to demonstrate the value. You've got to influence, and I believe you've got to cope. So, there is, in my experience, this might differ, but there are, we've now kind of got in some organisations 4 generations of people in the workforce. You have got organisations that are still steeped in hierarchy, in structure, in top-down command and control. And I believe that if you're going to start something in terms of a movement or change, you've got to start, from the bottom. But you've got to get those people. You've got to demonstrate the value. You've got to prove to them the difference that this will make. Straight away, fear, defence is going to come up because it's about that control. It's about that sense of power. But it is for the greater good, and it sounds a little bit kind of, I have a dream sort of thing, but it isn't. You've got to kind of influence people to demonstrate that there is a better way, a more effective way. But you've got to talk in terms of the language that they will be used to. So rather than it just be, people can, connect and get to know each other a little better, start talking about the transfer of information, or how do you actually keep that knowledge within a business so that people can actually find it much quicker. Once you start talking about that in terms of productivity and efficiency, people working more effectively together and creating a greater sense of identity and a culture, then it again comes down to, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you say, I know Suk, who's also in the room, will chat to me about the hierarchy, but it is a basic need as human beings. We need to feel a sense of belonging. We need to feel a sense of identity. Find your tribe. And I think as a leader in an organisation, you need to be doing everything in your power to create that sense of unity, that bond to the brand, feeling part of the organisation, and giving your people a voice and empowering people to be able to contribute is hugely helpful. And it scares people to death. A good example of that is when I worked for the bank that I mentioned earlier. We had a kind of intranet site, and there was the ability for two-way comments. Oh my word! But the frustrating thing about that was the comments were moderated. So you get involved and you type a response, and then it would just disappear into the ether for somebody else to sign off to make sure that that was the right comment. And it's that sort of mindset that you need to change. There will be, when you do any sort of change like that, there will be the spike of what's in the Gartner's hype cycle. There's the what is it? It's the next day. So it's the peak of inflated expectations, and there's the trough of disillusionment. And whenever you do something new within an organisation, there will be some people who do abuse it, or some people who take it to the extreme. But what you will find when you start connecting more people and demonstrating how these technologies can be used within the organisation, that it will start to be group moderated, and people will stop actually, being negative, or people will be negative in a constructive or more coherent way. But I think I've kind of waffled a little bit in terms of the question, but I think that's, you've got to tackle it head on. You can't be scared of it. Because again, that is a cultural thing about fear and not being able to do something within the organisation because you're scared of the hierarchy and the structure and the power. So challenge, I'm not talking anarchy. You've got to do it constructively and get these people on board who are influencers within the business. And if they get it and start demonstrating themselves, then that makes it okay. To answer the question, I'll give you a little bit.
Yeah. Brilliant. You've mentioned tribe a couple of times, yes. and this tribe that you're part of has grown, and yes. This kind of seeded the beginning. Can people come and go from that tribe? Is it kind of a fluid, transient kind of population?
Yeah, and this is in order to be able to do what I've done at DPG, I was a member of the Learning and Skills Group, and still am. That was an online community, and the first kind of community that I understood and got to grips with the technology. And that met my need at that time. I'm a member of LinkedIn groups, I'm a member of Google Plus communities, and I dip into the communities as and when I need to. And I think that's another thing from, in relation to the question, is that it's about creating structures and places that you can go when you need to go there to find information or to connect with people or to reconnect with people and do what you've got to do. For me, the identity and the sense of tribe is very much trying to, associate yourself with like-minded people or people that, you have something in common with. And I think a community of practice, if you define it, is, we're a group of people to come together with a shared interest or shared passion, and they share information to improve their own practice. But I see people being very active on the DPG community and in other communities for a few months because they're working on a project, or they need to get access to information. And then they'll disappear and maybe come back 3 or 4 months later. So I don't think that the whole tribe is, you're not tied into that, permanently. But you can blend in. You can treat it in a fluid way. That once it's there as a resource, and you can dip in. And I think I've made some really, really strong friends and good relationships, primarily through online communication. Just like the event today, a lot of people that I had met face to face. I met primarily through Twitter or through online, and that really helps strengthen those relationships. And I think what I've noticed in the DPG community is that when people are active and open to it, they get such a better experience as part of their program when they're working towards a qualification. Yeah, people.
So the audio is still working. There we go.
We're back.
We're back.
So yeah, I think in answer to your question, it's not about setting something up for life, because your needs will change as you develop and progress yourself. So use the resources available to you, of which might be a community or different communities. Use it for what you can, contribute to those communities, and then if the need moves away, then that's fine.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Have we got any more questions, Kate? We might have in a moment. We have.
So
I just want to reflect back to you guys that there's some really great contributions coming through on the live chat with the hashtag #LiveClive. And so just to let you know that there's some really good comments coming through. So people are watching, they're responding through the stream. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Okay, brilliant.
It's a great format as well.
Thank you. I had a question about if people are coming and going, how is it that people feel safe in that environment and feel that they can quickly get what they need and make a contribution? Is there something that you've done that's made that space really inviting and right for people?
The trust element is massively important. So, for example, in the early stages, so 2 years ago, when we started creating the community, and this links into, again, the theme of today, which is about being daring and creative and not being afraid to get it wrong. And I think one of the first things that we did is that we made it optional. And this sounds really strange, because I'm not talking about forcing people into doing something, but it's about how you design the community experience, instead of just being an add-on, to being part of the experience. And then when you're marketing and when you're selling that to somebody, to make them feel part of that straight away creates an emotional tie. But you link it to what they're actually going to use it for. So Martin and I just had a very quick chat before about some of the things that we're doing is around creating better learning skills, so digital skills, using technology. But actually, does that make sense to people, or is it about career development? And we've been playing around with different formulas and ideas to get people the hook in. But I think that in answer to your question more specifically, I think one of the more powerful things within a community is the role of the community manager or the community nurturer, and that person who makes contact with somebody to say, something, so thanks for being here. I've read your profile, making reference to things that they talked about, making them feel at home, welcoming them, taking that fear away. And a lot of the content that is created isn't necessarily through people saying, actually, I've got something that I want to share, because a lot of people don't think what they have is worth sharing. And in actual fact, it is hugely worth sharing, because that's their experience. So it's creating that sort of trust that, let me help you write a blog. If you've got something that you need to ask, we could use a discussion, or we could do something, like a Hangout, in which we've helped, members answer their own questions around branch events, for example. So I think the role of that community manager in building that trust and creating that sense of that space where they can feel welcome is hugely important, and that's something that we've learned, throughout the process.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you need a person. It's a people community, isn't it? It's populated with people, so there has to be that really human element.
Yeah, it's not about the technology. The technology is purely the enablement. How do you bring that personality and that trust and those feelings through the technology?
So the same rules apply in the virtual world as apply in the real world,
yes,
in terms of the human contact.
Yes.
Kate's got a question.
It's a question from Ian. What's the tipping point that changes an online forum into a real and valuable collaboration?
So when you say tipping points, I automatically think of the law of diffusion of innovation, where you've got your innovators and your early adopters and your early majority, and there's that tipping point where you go over a certain percentage. In my experience, you're always going to have laggards in that context, where people they're just not interested. But you will get those people that are advocates of it. They're a little bit uncomfortable about it, but once they understand and feel the value, that they will participate. In my experience of running a number of different communities, the 99-1 rule still exists. And it's not an exact rule, it's just a framework so to think about that in an online community, out of 100 people, you will have one active contributor, the power user, as it were, whatever you want to describe it. 9 of those people will be occasional users, or they will contribute actively, but not as much. And then 90 people will consume and they'll lurk. But that's not to say that they're not getting value. So it's really difficult saying that there is a tipping point, because if you look at analytics, and this is, using analytics is hugely important, and interpreting your data to find out when people are coming into the community, what popular topics, what are the things that people are viewing, helps you identify what is adding value for people. So if one post gets 500 views versus another post that gets 20 views, is that you can start to understand what your audience is actually looking for and what they need. My own tipping point within the DPG community started when our facilitation team started communicating primarily through the community, and this was a big switch, because it showed all our learners that actually this was the right medium to do it in. And once people saw other people doing it, then they would also get involved because it was all right. And it is almost like a group thing, like group mentality. Well, if you're doing it, then it's okay for me to do it. And again, it's back to that lone nut. Who is the first person who's going to be daring and who's going to just stand out as a little bit different and do something to encourage others to do that? There is safety in numbers. I think, as social animals, as humans, if you think about the herd mentality, it's a lot easier to act as a herd as opposed to that one person. So in terms of tipping point, you could argue it's activity, but you could also argue that it's views, because if people are using it actively and regularly, then that could be the tipping point. But yeah, I think every community will have different tipping points, and again, it comes back to what is your community for, because that tipping point might be very different. It might not be around active contributions, it might be about how many people read something. It might be on the number of replies, the number of people who are active versus the number of people who work. But I used to think, oh my God, workers are terrible. They're not getting something, they're not participating from it. But to be honest, the more people that come into that community and either interact or get information from it, the better. But the key is then how are they using it back in their own workplaces or for their own personal development. And sometimes that is a case about asking the question. What we are very good at is asking people what adds value for them, and then not be afraid to change, to tweak, to experiment, to fail, get it wrong, learn from it, try again, which links into the kind of the agile philosophy as well. And that don't be afraid to change things, because things will change constantly. So I kind of hope that gives a bit of cool.
Okay, so I'm curious to understand what next for this community. How does it evolve? Because it's evolved hugely to this point. How does it go from here?
So everything's a sort of evolutionary process, and I think in terms of community management, there's a formula, there's a life cycle to a community, starting from inception, where you've got that core, that idea about what you want it to achieve, to one of sort of growing maturity. And what we've noticed over the last 2 years is that we got to such a capacity that there was just too much information there. It was very difficult to come into that space and find what you were looking at. So actually that was acting as a barrier, because people would come in and go, I'm not sure what I'm meant to do here. So that was a big learning point for us from a design perspective. So the last 3 months is we've just recently launched the new version of the DPG community, and we've listened to what people have been telling us about finding relevant content. So we've created different spaces focusing on different areas. We're curating a lot more of information now. So what we're trying to create is a space for HR and L&D professionals to come to find what's relevant, what is what's in context for them, that they can develop their own thinking that's linked to the programs. And it kind of got to that phase of mitosis where you've got this big big beast of 2,500 people coming together. And what we've done through working with the people who use it, and then looking at what technology we need to support it, is to create clearly defined areas for people to go to. Help people find and filter information is hugely important. And the biggest challenges that I get is, there's just so much stuff out there. How do you find what's of interest to me? And again, if you think about those skills that you need to operate in this brilliant 21st century world of hyperconnectivity and always on, is that how do you filter? How do you find stuff that's of relevance? And I think those are the driving things now that have driven the community development. How can people find information quickly? How can they connect easily? Excuse me. How can they find things that are beneficial to them as quickly as possible? And how can you support that, as opposed to a thing that just grew so quickly over the 18 months, 2 years. But it is about taking a step back, thinking what value is it adding, what do people want from it, and then letting that inform the design and the structure behind it. But it is absolutely about enhancing customer experience and getting people to become more familiar with the tools.
Brilliant. Okay, Suk, is there anything that from the Twitter chat that's worth throwing in our final moment or two? Putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
From the Twitter stream, crowd pleasing activities. Andrew Jacobs just talked about that. I think that's quite interesting. So to reach the tipping point, what sorts of things can you do to get to that tipping point more quickly?
Okay.
Because there are some things you can do, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've experimented with is the whole idea of, and like the term below, the gamification. So within the community, an initiative that we ran was around providing badges in terms of reward and recognition for people who contributed to the community. So give them an added incentive that actually if they write a blog or they post a discussion or it gets a certain amount of hits or interactions, at the end of the month we would look at the analytics and see who has been the most active contributor within the community in that monthly period. As an organisation, and we want to put them up, we want to showcase that they've contributed and recognise, bottom line, value that contribution. And I think that's an authentic piece of somebody saying, listen, it's not just about wearing that badge, but it is acknowledging that somebody has contributed and added value. And we gave them a financial reward in terms of money off a qualification programme, and they got shout outs in the weekly updates. In fact, we have the top 10 collaborators. The top collaborator got a set amount, and then the other 9 people also got the badge. And that worked really well, Martin, to be honest, because people could start to see who was contributing and what they were contributing. And again, it comes back to that point of when you see other people do it, you can take confidence from that. Oh, right, okay, so they're doing that. That's not too complicated. That's not too difficult. I'm going to try that. And again, some people have come in. I mean, Steve Davis was on our level 5 HRM program. He got top collaborator 4 months on the trot, which was unprecedented. But he was in a space at that time where everything was kind of new to him, and he was asking so many questions and posting things that he came across. And it was fantastic, to give him that accolade and that financial reward for doing that. But then he wore the badge with pride. And when we met Steve at the CIPD L&D show, it was just like meeting an old friend, and just through creating those conversations in that manner, in a positive way, and highlighting the benefit that he was adding for others, was really important. So I think that it's an example, Martin, of how you can do that. We do send kind of a weekly update out, just kind of highlighting what's happening in each of our zones, what the top content is. We create a lot of different content now from various different events. I'm really raising awareness of what's happening out there to people that you don't know what you don't know. So if we can show and help people connect with other things and get them involved, then that filters back into the community because they share what they've done.
Fantastic. We're kind of at the end of this episode of Collaborate Live. Mike, thank you so much for being our guest. It's been really interesting hearing your story about the DPG community. We are live from the City College in Glasgow, and this is the ScotLanDConnect Unconference. So we've got 2 more live Collaborate Lives. So live Clive is your hashtag. So we'll be back later on today with 2 more. And we're talking about how we release creativity in organisations, and we'll also be talking about using emergent methods in learning and development. So hopefully you'll join us for that, but thank you very much for watching.